Well, I was rolling down that highway, listening to my radio, and the news was crying, bad to worse. The world's so full of woe. Sound familiar? When I spied a bumper sticker that said it oh so good. It said, honk if you love Judas, and underneath in parentheses, Jesus would. Honk if you love Judas, don't you know Jesus would? Christ preached compassion, peace and brotherhood. So turn the other cheek in the love for which he stood, and honk if you love Judas, 'cause you know that Jesus would. Well, those words got me to thinking about the love that Jesus gave to the soldiers driving in those nails that sent him to his grave. He said, love those who hate us, and he showed us that we could. So honk if you love Judas, Jesus would. Honk if you love Judas, don't you know Jesus would? Christ preached compassion, peace and sisterhood. So turn the other cheek in the love for which he stood, and honk if you love Judas, 'cause you know that Jesus would. Well, it's such a heavy challenge. This old world's so filled with night, and there's always some reason to hate someone or fight. Oh, but Jesus said it clearly. Love is not misunderstood. You either feel it or you don't. So honk if you love Judas, 'cause you know that Jesus would. Honk if you love Judas, don't you know Jesus would? Christ preached compassion, peace and humanhood. So turn the other cheek in the love for which he stood, and honk if you love Judas, 'cause you know that Jesus would. We're singing, honk if you love Judas, or Osama bin Laden, or Rush Limbaugh, or Obama, 'cause you know that Jesus would. Yes, he would. Yes, he would. When I wrote that last verse, it shows you how automatic art really is, real art. I was thinking about that the other day, the difference between art and an artist and a hack. An artist writes because they have to. They simply have to.
Right.
A hack kind of thinks about the income and what can be gained from it, even though undoubtedly there's a little crossover there.
Well, that would be an interesting topic for a show, the meaning of art.
But back to my point before I digress into the South 40, I wrote that last verse. It said, Jesus said it clearly, love is not misunderstood. I thought, what do you mean it's not misunderstood? They crucified you. That's how much it can be misunderstood. And then I realized, no, it's from the perspective of the person who's loving. If you're experiencing the love, and if you happen to be an enlightened saint like Jesus was, you can actually undeniably be experiencing love while they're nailing you up. So Welcome to A Question of Meaning.
We're Arthur and Katie.
I'm Katie.
And what's the meaning of being Katie, right?
Yes.
Well,
we
like to kind of delve into meaning here, and
our last show was, what is the meaning of A Question of Meaning?
That's right.
Show.
I decided that a good name for it would be, what's the point? I know, what is the point of questioning?
What are you guys trying to say?
Yeah, really.
Well, we covered that last week. Too bad you missed it.
You missed it. So actually, we decided we'd do another just show where we turn the camera on and see what happens, because it's kind of fun when we do that.
It's kind of like the old National Lampoon radio dinner sequel or parody of a quiz show called Catch It and You Keep It. We're standing on the 4th floor of the CBS broadcast studios in Burbank, California. The contestants are gathered in the parking lot below. We simply toss merchandise over the side, and if you catch it, you keep it.
Unfortunately, I think there is a new reality show on something like that. I saw an ad for something that looked just kind of like that.
Really?
But it was like...
It was like Beat the Clock.
No. It was like a...
I used to like that show.
What do you call a bungee cord thing? Or you jumped off of... Believe me, I tried not to pay enough attention to be able to describe it any more thoroughly than that. But anyway, I was thinking that these shows are fun for us when we don't have a topic. I don't know, maybe they're not fun for you.
It's the ones where they dive off the tower with cords attached to their feet, like that African tribe, the Right of Manhood.
Yeah.
And it springs them up just before they hit.
That's a bungee cord, yeah. But it's some sort of show where merchandise is over the edge, too. I don't know.
Cool.
I don't know. I'm sure a viewer could call us. Let us know what that show is. We try to not be too aware of what's going on out there in the lamestream culture.
Lamestream culture is right. That stuff is toxic. Now, URTV, this is really something, this is like an original independent mom and pop burger joint as opposed to McDonald's or Burger King or Wendy's. You never know what you're going to get when you tune in Channel 20. Which is a dandy reason to leave it on, get it on the air, keep it on the air.
Keep it on the air, right.
There are vested interests out there. I mean, I know there's a lot of, everybody's got a different opinion, but I've seen right-wing conservatives have their volume, their venue on this channel. There's all sorts of, you folks at home, it's incredible. You should at least take the orientation tour of the studio.
That's right. You can come in and you can make your own show. If you don't like what's on the air, make your own.
Tea partiers, here's your chance.
Or
man.
Progressives, that's my feeling, is
Yes.
the Tea Party, they have lots of people out there saying their line. Where's the Progressive Party out there creating a new grassroots movement? That's what we need, or some progressive leaders stirring up.
What we need is a world government and puts a ban up the human race's backside, makes us behave for about 500 years. When we come out, we'll all be the same color, we'll speak the same language, and we will no longer be in danger of extincting ourselves.
Yeah.
But that's another show.
Maybe.
My special solution. I wanted to, never mind.
So what's been on your mind lately, Arthur?
Oh, good Lord. Well, you're going to California for a week, and I'm trying to figure out how I can survive. I'll have to make a bachelor special. In my bachelor days, I had this concoction. Because like a lot of men, I wasn't really thrilled about cooking, so it had this huge pot, a big aluminum pot. Aluminum shavings probably added something.
I'm
I'd
sure.
take about 3 pounds of egg noodles, boil them, drain them, throw them in the pot. 5 or 6 cans of tuna, throw them in the pot, undrained as I recall. And a couple of pounds of cheese chopped up, throw that in the pot, and then boil about 2 or 3 heads of broccoli and chop that up, throw it in the pot. And you stir the whole mixture up, and you'd have like gallons of what I call bachelor special. And you have to take a shelf out of your refrigerator, which is easy because there's nothing else in it, being a typical bachelor. And I was starving once in my early days. Work! Hadn't eaten in days. And my parents came to visit, and all that was in my refrigerator was a jar of French, what's that mustard? He makes that
French's.
Stuff? French's mustard. And a heel of a loaf. No, they didn't see it. I told them about it. It was the only thing in my refrigerator, a heel of bread, out of the pack, just sitting on the shelf. One piece of
dried
stone hard dried bread that fortunately was not hippie bread, since it was It had been in there for weeks. It was, it would have grown mold otherwise, but it was so filled with preservatives that it was still edible. I ate it, smeared with, and the only reason the mustard was in there was that I hate mustard. But I was so hungry that I actually made a mustard sandwich, and I made the mistake of telling my parents and my stepfather, never let me get over it. Mustard sandwich. Anyway, I think there was a point to this.
Hunger is the best sauce, right?
Truly the best sauce. Starvation is even better.
I think I was asking you what was on your mind. So clearly, what you're going to eat while I'm gone is on your mind.
Yeah, all right. And that was, thank you very much. So the Bachelor Special, and I love this woman in California. I was describing and I said, and the best part is, all you do is just take the big pot out of the refrigerator whenever you're hungry, and you just eat out of the pot. And you can put the pot back in the refrigerator and not have to wash any dishes. And I always love her for this, because women don't usually cop to this line of thinking. She said, yeah, and you don't even have to, you leave the spoon in there, you don't have to wash that either. Oh, yeah. So I don't know if I'll sink that low. I was in pretty...
You've been domesticated by me,
yeah,
definitely.
That's true. We'll go to the deli and load up on a bunch of
I mean, that's the thing.
stuff.
I'm taking him grocery shopping before I go. Make sure he's okay.
Yeah, you got to make sure that, you know, I have to stay here. It's a family reunion Katie's going to
My
for
family.
almost a week, and I don't have a family. Or not any that I care to socialize, well, I'll put it that way. Now that's not very nice.
That's
I don't
not
have
very
many
nice.
left, you know,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
Well, what I'm mostly worried about is the cat.
That's right. I have to stay here and take care of the cat. That's my excuse.
Because she's pretty devoted to me, and
It's putting it mildly.
we're a little nervous about how she's going to react to Arthur, because we've gone off, both of us, and left her alone. But we've never gone off. I've never gone off for a few days since we've had her, and left here with Arthur, and we're not sure how she's going to react to that. What would she think that Arthur's done to me?
Probably. My parents had a big fight once. They had a motorhome, a GMC motorhome, and they decided to take a trip to New England for 2 weeks, and they took my grandmother along, my mother's mother. And it got so bad. It was a big motorhome, so it wasn't big enough. And they were going down, they were coming back on I-95 through South Carolina, I think, and in August, boiling hot outside, and the fight between my stepfather and my grandmother reached such proportions that my mother literally got her purse and went over and opened the door at 70 miles an hour to the motorhome, cracked it against the wind, and said, "Stop this motorhome or I'm going to jump." And my dad took it so seriously that he pulled over, and she jumped out, started back. They just passed an exit, started back toward the exit, and she heard somebody coming behind her. It was my grandmother with her purse. My mother thought she'd escaped, but she hadn't. I wrote a song about it, and I was like... But anyway, their cat was an exotic cat, a margay, a Central American jungle cat.
Who was devoted to Arthur's mother.
Devoted to my thank you for lugging me back by the ears to the point. To quote Mark Twain, the cat got in my mother's seat, in the big passenger seat in this thing, and growled and howled all the way to Florida. My stepdad, of course, turned around at the next exit, came back and tried to find him, but they were hiding in a Howard Johnson's, and wound up catching a bus that took hours to get back to Florida. It was really embarrassing, big blow up. This is the kind of dynamic family I come from. You know, Katie's family would never do anything like that. But I wrote just give you a quick taste of the song I wrote in honor of it. Let's see. 2 weeks on the road, now pull over or I'm gonna jump. You know the way I'm feeling, I don't even think I'd feel the bump. There's a Howard Johnson's up ahead, and I'm thinking I'd be better off dead. 2 weeks on the road, now pull over or I'm gonna jump. And the last verse goes, well, I've been all around and I've seen some real bad scenes, but none like being stuck in that can of mean sardines. But I've learned that a GMC is for sure not built for three. me 2 weeks on the road, now pull over or I'm gonna jump. Whee!
Well, that brings to mind some of my family vacations that we took. There were 5 kids in my family, and we had, this standard issue station wagon of the 70s, or late 60s.
Which at least is a pretty big car.
And and so we would have the 5 kids and a dog, of course, and we'd be pulling a trailer, but the trailer was tiny. I mean, compared to what the size of that motorhome was, it was a tiny.
An Airstream.
No, you keep saying Airstream. It was something else. Holiday Rambler is what it was.
What a nightmare. That's my idea
and,
of hell.
you
Would be on a trip
in,
like that forever.
On the right would be where the table was. That would fold down to be my parents' bed. And then, maybe 20 feet? Oh, maybe, I don't even know if it was 20 feet, was the other side with bunk beds. And the 5 kids would be bunked. And I can't even, and my memories, but my brother usually had a tent. And he and the dog was sleeping. My older brother would sleep in the tent. Sometimes I'd sleep out there with him. But, we'd go off for 2 weeks. I don't remember any fights or ever, we would fight over, the kids would fight over who got the window seat sometimes. They'd have to be strict rules over that. But I guess my family was just so repressed that...
They were Midwest. They were from the Midwest.
Right.
What can you say? Enough said.
And we just thought that was normal, being crammed in like sardines.
Well, this thing was 45 feet long. There was a bedroom, bathroom.
Right.
You could cook breakfast while somebody was driving.
Right.
Dining area, really nice, but it wasn't big enough. No, it's like when you go on a boat with somebody, you better really be sure you're compatible if you're really out there and there's no way out. I think that's what always bothered me about the Christian idea of heaven. I was raised loosely, thank God, a Southern Baptist, but it was enough. I got enough to screw me up. But the idea of heaven, I used to obsess about it when I was a really little kid. One of my earliest memories, I could sit and contemplate a city of light and people smiling and happy and worshiping God. And it was never night. It was always light, and the streets were gold, and everybody was just deliriously happy. And I used to sit and think about that and repeat the word forever and forever and forever and forever and forever and forever and forever until I would be almost like catatonic, frozen in horror at the idea of, I now think, probably being cooped up with the people I saw in church for never-ending time.
And you're telling it starts feeling really claustrophobic.
Yeah. Oh, I would. It was like that. It was like claustrophobia.
Right.
Just increasing. What a nightmare.
Right. Right.
That's the wonderful thing about death. Yeah, it would be in a right bloody mess if it weren't for death. Can you imagine being no way out? I mean, if things ever get bad enough, you could pull your own plug.
Yeah.
And we all know that deep, deep down, no matter what we say.
It's interesting because you always, for me, and I think most people, death is kind of as a negative that you block out of your consciousness and you're trying to keep from happening. You never think of it as a positive, in that positive light. It's kind of revelatory to think of it that way.
For many a time I have been half in love with easeful death, called him soft names in many a mused rhyme. Now more than ever seems it rich to die, to cease upon the midnight with no pain. With no pain. Remember that. Please, no pain.
And there's the rub, right?
Was that Keats, I think, maybe? I don't know. I don't know.
But then it just seemed like it was a nice segue to Hamlet, and asking whether, because the problem is I can't quote Ham because I was trying to remember what the quote is, and then he's the quoter.
Life is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. A poor actor who struts his time upon the stage. To sleep.
Yeah.
To sleep. I think I'm mangling that. Does this fit together?
See, that's the thing. I don't know.
Now seems that to sleep, perchance to dream. That's the rub. You may wake up with a pitchfork in your backside, which is what a lot of Christians, unfortunately, or just basically covering their rear ends with what they call fire insurance.
Oh, yeah. Well, how about the rest of us who believe in some form of reincarnation? And that, in some ways, that's just as bad or worse. It's coming back.
See Groundhog Day.
And having to...
You put your little hand in mine.
Reap what you've sown in this life to really experience the consequences.
No, that's just.
It is just. But hey, it's just because it's just doesn't mean it's pleasant.
Life wasn't put here to be pleasant. It's here to be excruciatingly painful.
If you're really honest and think about all of the things that you've done in your life, I mean, if I just look at my life, I think, oh God,
And I look at my life and I say, no comment. If she says, oh God.
Well, yeah.
Oh my God, Zilla.
Just all the little.
And then you get old and die on top of it. I was thinking of another poem actually from the by W.H. Auden from The Ascent of F6. When the green field, and this is a brilliant poem. To me, it always evokes the aging process, really getting old. When the green field comes off like a lid, exposing what was much better hid, unpleasant. And look, the woods have come up from behind and are standing round in deadly crescent, and the bolt is sliding in its groove. Outside the window stands the black collector's van, and now, with sudden, swift emergence, come the humpback surgeons, the women in dark glasses, and the scissor man.
Woo! This sounds like the Halloween show.
Welcome to Monster Chiller Theater.
And that poem is?
I said W.H. Auden, The Ascent of F6. To repeat
I guess
myself.
Obviously, I wasn't listening. I've just been exposed.
On the test.
Oh, wow.
Well, this is a ramble kind of catch-all.
I've always had so much trouble with poetry, to be honest, and that may be what I just revealed was my trouble with poetry. I am such a literalist. It's no surprise that I went into science when I went into college. As much as I loved, then my mind really, I would say, goes more towards, like I've talked before, politics, political science, history. But my mind works in such a scientific way, clear-cut, literal. Metaphors just leave me cold. I find like when I'm reading an article in a magazine that's about an idea, and they're describing a scientist or an author or something, and the writer of the article will go into some flowery language to try and describe the person. I'll just skip that. I'm like, I don't care what color hair they have. I don't care what clothes they're wearing. I'm just not interested in your attempts to.
You're telling me you read Lady Chatterley's Lover that way? Those scenes of.
No, I said when I read a magazine article.
Oh, in a magazine article.
But most, even I don't read
really
novels.
Skilled.
I don't read hardly any novels because I find that so rarely done well. And then poetry, it's like, what do you mean the scissor man? I guess maybe my imagination is faulty.
I would say it is. It sounds like it. It's evocative. Poem. It's like abstract art. I mean, I guess you don't like that either.
Hate it.
Because it. See, we're learning stuff about each other. We've been together for 30 years, and still fresh surprises. You have no imagination. Probably why you like my songs, because my songs are dead simple.
They are. They're very literal.
They say what they mean, but look, I mean...
Well, tell me.
God, I mean, oh, Mama, can this really be the end, to be stuck inside a mobile with the Memphis Blues again?
Well, that's very evocative.
It's very evocative. Well, so's the scissor man. When you're talking about, you think about it in terms of being old.
Yeah.
The women in dark glasses, how women cut their long hair and put dyke haircuts when they get older.
Yeah.
And they come around in dark glasses and they're joyless. And there are women like that, who've given up on whatever they've given up on, and it's just bare bones. The humpback surgeons. What a way to put it. I was paralyzed once in the hospital, and they had to draw blood a lot to see what was wrong with me. And I woke up, and this intern, it was a teaching hospital in Staten Island, and I woke up, and this really tall, mosquito-thin intern was bending over my arm, examining my veins.
Ooh,
to see where to stick the needle. And it was humpback surgeons, women in dark glasses, and the scissor man. is supposed to let your imagination just run with that.
Yeah.
A grotesquerie, something out of what were they? Bruegel?
Yeah.
Bruegel?
Yeah.
Just a bizarre nightmare image of reality starting to come unglued as you're facing the final indignities of decay and death. That's my interpretation.
Well, yeah. I mean, whenever I
So
hear
that's what it's
you
meant to do.
repeat
Like
that,
our buddy that was over here, the artist who was over here the other night, you don't know what that means, but it's beautiful and it's
Yes.
and it's evocative. I don't necessarily get any clear pictures from that particular piece, but
well, when I was in,
it opens up possibilities. It frees
Right.
your mind from that rigid scientific A is A and B is B, and forever they will forever be that way. Well,
Yes.
maybe not. Maybe
Right.
the mystical, the metaphysical, requires us to break out of that.
Well,
context.
I've said there's not a mystical bone in my body. And maybe when I say that, this is kind of what I mean. Is like I am so like rigidly, so what would it be, right brain? I mean, so just based on logic and not wanting anything of, you know, what I was thinking of when we were talking about this is I taught art for a couple years in a private school in Cashers, and it was one of the best jobs I've
Kids
ever
love
had.
for the color art teacher.
I just loved the job, even though I didn't have any training to be an art teacher, and I wasn't. There was all sorts of things I didn't know, but it was so much fun, and I had because it was a small private school. There was grades 3 through 6 were all together, and there was maybe 8 kids between those grades. And there was a challenge in that. And one of the challenges was one of the boys was extremely proficient at drawing what he saw. He could draw anything, and it was extremely accurate in its representation. And all the other 7 kids were extremely intimidated and felt like they had no artistic ability at all because he was the artist. And so I really was struggling with getting the other kids to feel comfortable expressing themselves. And then one of the things I noticed was this boy, who was the great representational artist, couldn't do anything else. It was like me, he had no imagination. He couldn't, anything other than that, he could not do, or he felt he really struggled with. So I thought, how can I break this logjam of this perception of art? So I decided to do a class where I got art books out of the library and showed them art through the ages and provoked them to tell me what it was that made something art. And so we kind of went through, showed ancient statues and Renaissance art, and that was all easy. Sure, this is art, this is art. And then we got to the abstract stuff, like one of my favorite things from the Art Institute in Chicago, which was a completely black painting, all black. And I showed them, and I said, "Is this art?" And they were like, "No way, this is not art." And I said, "Well, it's on the wall in a museum. Somebody considers it art." Then I'd show them things like more really modern conceptual art, like a piece of string hanging from the ceiling. And they were starting to get outraged and yelling. And I remember the principal kind of looking in the classroom like, why are they so disruptive? But because they were really getting upset. This is no way this is art. But by the end of the class, they really understood that art, was self-expression. So, I mean, it was just, maybe that's completely
Well, how does that
off
apply to
topic.
you? Because I think you're kind of in touch with a limitation here. You're kind of in
Yes.
touch with a limitation of an attitude about
It is.
poetry.
Well, I mean, and it's not like something I haven't known about myself. I've just always. Actually, that's not true. I've thought there was something wrong with poetry.
That sounds like an attitude, all right. I mean, it's formidable. It's like philosophy. A lot of what we talk about, we call ourselves lay philosophers because we think, we hope, we're still understandable. We're a professional philosopher. It's couched in such a system of language that's built around it that's basically indecipherable to the layperson. And I'm a little suspect of that myself. Mm-hmm. I mean, it should be accessible. I mean, I think ideally, Annie Dillard wrote, one of her books is called Write Like You're Dying. And I think art should be, you have to do it. You're just forced to do it.
Yeah, you started off saying that.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a song about songwriting. The labor pain hits me again. A song is being born. You must get free. Won't let me be. It's nagging like a thorn. It's grown inside a rising tide that's bound to overflow. And through my pen, my thoughts descend, take shape and start to grow. With ballpoint primed, my feelings rhymed, the page is filling in. The melody, so soon to be, is keeping time within. I never doubt what it's about in spite of all I do. The bottom line's the same each time. It's always, I love you, in some way, shape, or form. But that's it. It's an automatic process. That's art. And I think, ideally, that relationship, if it's self-expression that comes because it has to come, it will find an appreciator. Artists don't just send this out like radio beacons. Well, maybe they do, into deep space, hoping for a receiver, someone to receive it, someone to say, yeah, I hear that too. And so some of it is more formidable. Poetry certainly is. Mm-hmm. They're not like the rhyming telegram sent by the U.S. Army to someone who's just lost a member of the family who was in the armed forces. It said that was the lampoon telegrams. And if you saw your son Tomet, certainly would make you vomit. Deepest condolences from Uncle Sam and the new fun army. Oh, so, I mean, there's that kind of level of understandable. Walt Whitman comes to mind, probably arguably the greatest American poet. And a brief example, what is the grass? Said the child, fetching it to me with full hands. How could I answer the child? I don't know what it is any more than he.
No, I can understand that.
You can understand that. But the scissor man, that's where you part company with. It's like you're not really into jazz. You're not into really
plainly. Why do they put in all this flowery language, obscuring their meaning? Sometimes I think it's just a way to hide the fact that they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, like abstract art. Another prejudice revealed.
That's right. Oh boy. Well, so here, viewers, call in. Tell me how wrong I am.
We saw a documentary on Andy Warhol. He had a death and destruction series, really interesting. Mm-hmm. Really bad car wrecks, photographs of these terrible car wrecks that he had silk screened and painted over. The recently one sold for over $70 million. Mm-hmm. A car wreck photograph with green paint on it, a silk screen.
Yeah, I had a little trouble with that because he didn't take the photographs. He used other people's photographs, and he just made silk screens of them and then sold them as his own work. And it seemed to me...
Campbell's soup can, the can of soup, sold for $17 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a little trouble with that, too.
I was just here. Here's this maybe an art you'd like. I was just reading. You may be starting to realize I like the New Yorker magazine. There's an article in this week's issue about an artist who would paint naked women in this color blue that was
funny. I was just about to say, I think erotic
blue
could be a great art form that's never really been explored because of our idiotic,
that's true,
puritanical BS.
Well, so what he would do is he'd paint the women and then have them roll around on the canvas, and then you have to look at the magazine. There's a picture. I will. Of two naked women covered in blue paint, and you can see on the wall behind them what And the one that's on the wall looks like they weren't really rolling around. But you could kind of tell it was how a naked female body would look if it was pressed up against a surface. Interesting.
Very interesting. It kind of reminds me of the Andy Warhol started the pop art movement, and there was a Tom Paxton song about the guy he's in New York, and he walks into what he thinks is a grocery store, and it turns out to be a pop art gallery with all the Campbell's soup and the Brillo pad boxes and everything. And he tries to buy a can of soup, and he finds out it's $600. And he said, while he's standing there in slack-jawed with amazement, a man comes up and puts a dill pickle on the counter and says, "I don't know much about art, but I know what I like." So
now maybe this isn't apocryphal story, and maybe it's true. I thought it was true, but that in an art gallery, when the janitor was in the gallery with his, cart, janitor
Brushes,
cart,
mops.
That's right, cleaning supplies, and somebody tried to buy it because they thought that the
Brilliant.
janitor's cart was a piece of art.
The colors, the
arrangement.
The arrangement, the realness of it. God, it's incredible. And the janitor came up and pushed it slowly away. Wah, wah. It shows what a bunch of funnies those art connoisseurs are.
Connoisseur, that's right. But, and you could say that this whole idea of abstract art rests on that the concept of consensual reality that we've kind of briefly talked about in other shows, where it's based on agreement in a way that maybe a lot of representational art isn't. I say a Rembrandt portrait of somebody. It looks like that person, and so it's a good piece of art because it looks like them, and it's beautiful, and it captures light and color.
Damn right.
And
it takes unbelievable amount of skill to do that.
Right.
It's not something that anybody can do.
That's right. But something like a piece of string hanging from the ceiling, a conceptual art.
Or a can of tomato soup, Campbell's tomato soup.
That makes so that it's the idea that that's art is exactly that. It rests on a shared belief system that this is acceptable art, and actually, in the town where we were before, and where we had a TV show, and I did some interviews. I filmed a gallery talk by a conceptual artist, and it really occurred to me that how insecure at some level a conceptual artist must be, because your ability to be shown in galleries is so dependent upon this consensual reality continuing in your favor and you following the trend of that consensual beliefs. And where someone like Rembrandt, I mean, it was pretty solid. You're a good painter, but someone like the guy hanging the string. I mean, what basis is anybody can hang a string from a ceiling?
Well, Van Gogh broke the rules, and look where he got, nowhere.
Right.
He sold maybe 1 or 2 paintings in his life, I think. Mm-hmm. Shot himself in the head.
Let's do a song.
Let's do a song.
We're at 22 minutes before the hour. So
before the hour, okay.
That means it's song time.
This is kind of fun. It's
it is fun.
Just a little visitation here, a little visiting.
This is what it's like if you came over to our house and we started having a conversation. This is exactly the kind of conversation we'd have. Certainly learned something about me today.
A glaring character defect. Or what a redneck.
I think I'm going to have to go out and do some reading and poetry.
That's right. Your assignment.
My assignment.
I was thinking, you think you could just kind of keep this beat? We'll do a song by somebody else for once. I was thinking about my late friend Gamble Rogers.
Now here's some poetry I like.
Called Color Becoming Grace. The boy with the shadow eye and clubfoot coming by, the community women conjured them with a glance. There by the house of gray and green grass, passing away out past all limit of seeing, where faintly seen a yellow streaming slithered in the green. The crows came endless over, folding and unfolding dark intent. 1,000 shaking shadows over green and yellow swooped and screamed and rent the one who flapped ahead, crippled to begin, who then fell dead from out the sky before the boy with the shadow eye and clubfoot. One day at school and then away, the other children up from play, flinging stones. The shadow boy leaps and moans and flaps away. The others turn, and he comes to stay by the house of gray, near the green, where the yellow goes. Bright sun glows daily over green. It pleased the boy to lie unseen, at last befriended by that yellow flowing. But who could blame the stranger come by chance to slay that golden rattlesnake who slithered in the green? Or the boy who stomps, mourns farther between dry green grasses, seeking nothing but the yellow of hope, turning now his shadow eye on every man, 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 on every man. Now that's poetry.
Now that's poetry.
Oh God, you should hear the way Gamble could play that on the guitar. It was unbelievable. It was complex, unbelievable changes that he would do while reciting that on top of it. Master guitar player, third generation architect who left home and hearth and just hit the road with his guitar because he had to make art. It was more important to make art than houses.
Right. Or
died a hero's death saving a tourist who went into the surf off Flagler Beach, Florida, and got in trouble in the run out, and Campbell almost got him out, but the surf was so, they almost lost several lifeguards retrieving their bodies. He's a wonderful guy. A Faulkner character, specifically V.K. Ratliff, if any of you are William Faulkner fans out there.
yeah, they named a state park after him down there south of Flagler Beach, and they have a festival, I think.
Yeah, Gamble Rogers Folk Festival every year.
He was a storyteller, as you can see. I mean, to me, it's poetry, but it's a story. It's so evocative of colors and pictures.
I'm just the godfather to the prodigal son, and I move about by sleight of hand. You can see me levitating on East Baltimore Street with all my goods in a Prince Albert can. Well, I'm a well-known face along Columbia Trace and the dark side of the moon. They call me Habersham County Mephistopheles, and I'll exorcise your demon pretty soon, pretty mama. I'm gonna exorcise your little demon pretty soon. Well, when you've heard the ocean roar in a mustache cup and found the truth on a jailhouse walk, you'll find there's food and Spanish cigarettes and philosophy and idle talk. Well, I was weaned on a pickle, still I learned how to smile. You see, the Lord gives me grace, but the devil gives me style. Said, boy, you better start out like you can hold out, son, if you want to leave this earth alive. Thank you, devil.
Was he born?
He was had a lot of his kinfolk were from Habersham County, Georgia,
right
up north of Atlanta.
Yeah, because there's Appalachian references in some of his songs, which are really nice.
Farewell, moon daughter, your body is my tomb. My spirit fades like starlight in your room. So I'm going to Bryson City where the Cherokee rose tree blooms.
And the black, you know you're lucky when there's a black snake living on your doorstep
underneath your
stoop and a salamander in your spring.
Yeah, Saturday's luck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should do some of my songwriter buddies over the years that I've run across. Do some of their material.
Yeah, that's one of the, I was going to say shames, is that Arthur knows so many songwriters with all these amazingly wonderful songs that are just no one will ever hear, or hardly anyone will ever hear, because there's such a dominance of the media by corporate
media.
Right,
Yeah.
and so the very few singers, very few songwriters ever get heard. And
Plus,
there's such a wealth.
we're suckers for acoustic music. I'm a folky man. Yeah. I love acoustic guitar. I hate all that plugged-in stuff. I've never cared for rock and roll. Blues is fine, but we tend to be it's just so overproduced.
I think it is. I think it's the lyric content is what we like, because that's
right. Well, maybe when you're playing an acoustic guitar, you can hear what the hell this person's singing.
That's right.
I'll never forget I used to like Led Zeppelin, or exception for rock. And when I finally heard their lyrics, it was like, oh God, that's not very interesting, is it?
No wonder.
Long time since the rock and roll. Boom, 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 boom. Been a long time since the rock and roll.
That's right.
Boom, boom,
There's a reason you can't hear what they're saying.
Been a long time, baby, since the rock and roll. Wow, wow, wow. It's been a long time, been
Yeah,
a
what
long
does that mean
time, been a
anyway?
long, lonely time. Oh, they were great. I love Led Zeppelin. I always regretted never seeing them when they were really hot. But I had many interesting evenings on my Oriental carpet in San Francisco with my headphones on. Feeling good. It's a strange world. It's a strange world.
I read we're just kind of talking here, read this interesting article. It's a series of articles by Errol Morris in the New York Times. And it was about, I can't say the name of the word, agnosophobia or something. No, that's not right. But it's when you have an illness, say some people are paralyzed, and they're aware in all sorts of ways, but they're not aware of their paralysis, and it's kind of an odd thing. Like
it is odd.
Say
Since I was paralyzed, and I assure you, I was aware of mine.
Well, I know, well, not everyone. I mean, this is a specific disorder.
Malady,
Yes, that's why it has this agnosophobia, which means unaware of your affliction.
Oh,
And
that's a good one.
so,
like that.
some people would be paralyzed on the left side, and the doctor would say, "Give me something with your right hand." And they would do it. And then they say, give me something with your left hand. And they would just sit there and do nothing. But it was like they wouldn't recognize that they were unable to move. It's really weird. But he talked about what this led to was that how much of our lives, he called the unknown unknowns. And that Donald Rumsfeld had used that there's the known unknowns, and then there's the unknown unknowns. And all of us liberals had mocked him, as that was just one of Donald Rumsfeld's, ridiculous things to say.
My goodness, I didn't know there were that many bases in the whole country.
Right, like that.
Believe we're quoting Rumsfeld.
But this researcher into these brain maladies said that when he heard that, he was really amazed, and he said that was one of the most impressive things he'd heard out of a politician's mouth all year, or for a long time, because it was expressing something that actually this is a phrase that psychologists have been using for some time, and it's just not been in common discourse, that there's a whole host of unknown unknowns in our lives, and that you may know you don't know some things, but the scary thing is not knowing that you don't know things, and that they have done research with people who are not, like, say, the low people who have the lowest level of intelligence. A lot of times those people don't realize how low intelligence they have, how incompetent they are at performing tasks. They think they're competent when they're not, and there's this they don't even know that they need help.
Well, like an alcoholic doesn't know that they're an alcoholic until they face it.
Right.
You're pouring liquor down your neck every night, Josephine. But until you face it, you don't have a problem.
Right.
You just happen to like getting sloshed every night.
Right.
Party.
So
feel good.
And it's just an
Relax.
interesting. And then today, just reading something else in the Times, I saw a reference to the unknown unknowns, like it's maybe just working its way into consciousness. That there's this whole, how much is out there that we don't even know exists. We don't even know to ask a question about it because we don't know that we don't know it.
And we have, what's that phrase you coined? We consistently overestimate
our level. We consistently overestimate our level of consciousness and consistently underestimate our level of unconsciousness.
Like, let's ask the viewing audience, as we've done many times before, do you know who you are? We suggest humbly, as humble as we can be, being brilliant, we suggest you don't have a clue who you really are. Know is a huge word. It's an absolute. To know is to know absolutely, without limitation, without any qualification. When you say, I know, that means you know. And I'm unaware of that unknowns. Mm-hmm. I look in the mirror every day and I think, yeah, that's who I am. That's me. I know that. I know who that is, or what that is, or where that is, or when that is, or why that is, or where that came from, and where it's going. I don't actually go down the list, but that's kind of assumed that I know all that stuff. I don't know any of that stuff. I have no idea what that is. Neither does the greatest genius scientist in the world. Speculation. They don't know what one dot of matter is, or wave, or particle. And the show we will be doing is on humility, is getting in touch with that fact, getting in touch with our limitations, the vast sea of unknowns that our precarious little lifeboat of our life floats upon. And it's scary as hell.
Well, maybe you could, because you could say for what an unknown unknown is say before, I think what a lot of people don't know, and it surprises me every time I think about it, that we didn't realize that there was more than just our galaxy until the 1930s, that our telescope technology was not good enough. We thought that what was up in the sky...
Outside the solar system, and then there were a bunch of stars out there.
Right.
That's all.
So the idea of a galaxy was an unknown unknown until sometime in the 1930s. There was the question, how many stars in a galaxy, or what are the different shapes galaxies exist in, was a completely impossible question to ask because no one knew that there was a galaxy. That was an unknown unknown. We didn't even know to ask that question. And all of a sudden, the advance in telescope technology that allowed us to see that all those things we saw up there was really just our local galaxy, and there's this whole universe out there, all of a sudden opened up this whole field of unknown knowns. We still don't know all about it, but we at least know enough to ask questions about it.
Right.
Just remember that you're standing on a planet that's evolving, revolving at 900 miles an hour. It's orbiting at 19 miles a second, so it's reckoned the sun that is the source of all our power. Now the sun and you and me and all the stars that we can see are moving at 1,000,000 miles a day in the outer spiral arm at 40,000 miles an hour of a galaxy we call the Milky Way. Our galaxy itself contains 100 billion stars. It's 100,000 light years side to side. It bulges in the middle, 16,000 light years thick, but out by us, 30,000 light years thick, but out by us it's just 3,000 light years wide. We're 30,000 light years from galactic central point. We go round every 200 million years. And our galaxy itself is one of millions of billions in this amazing and expanding universe. Instrumental. Our universe itself keeps on expanding and expanding in all of the directions it can whiz. As fast as it can go, the speed of light, 11 million miles a minute, and that's the fastest speed there is. So remember, when you're feeling very small and insecure, how amazingly unlikely is your birth. And pray that there's intelligent life somewhere out in space, 'cause there's bugger all down here on Earth, I want to tell ya. There's bugger all down here on Earth.
Oh, yeah. Now we can be sued. That's
right, I was going to say, Arthur, whoa.
That's a copywritten song, and we ask humbly for Monty Python and their assignees to please excuse that lapse and not Try to get blood from a stone is another way of putting it.
That's right. Well, that's from The Meaning of Life by Monty Python. And it's quite amazing. I'm always impressed at Arthur's ability to remember all those numbers. But what a great...
Just in the middle, 60,000 light years thick, but out west it's just 3,000 light years wide, lackluster neighborhood. We're 30,000 light years from Galactic Central Point.
And that song was all to show the insignificance of a woman's life so that she could be convinced to donate her liver.
Give her liver up.
That's right, with all those statistics.
Sorry if any of you have seen that movie to evoke the liver donor scene. Pretty, those boys were so bad.
They were bad.
They're professional scoffers. They made a lifetime successful career of being arch skeptics.
Yeah, because,
which is in perfect keeping with the British tradition.
Yeah, but then
that's another song to mind.
That movie was ultimately disappointing because it said, what was the meaning of life? Well, nothing. I think they came up with the number 43 when we did we talked about doing a film where we went around asking people the meaning of life. Of course, somebody did say that it was 43. But I mean, why do? I guess that was the whole point.
That was from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
It's the computer. The question was the whole secret, but they could never find the question. They just came up with the
right,
answer.
The answer.
Supercomputers worked for years, decades, and finally came up with the answer. It's like when God appeared in the South Park episode and would allow one question, and they were all debating about whether to, what is the question we can ask that'll make sense of it all. And one of the children, Stan, who, this will teach you not to provide good sex education early on, had heard about the clitoris and he had no idea what it was.
And nobody would tell him.
So we broke to the front of the crowd and said, "What is the clitoris?" that was the question. And God disappeared after answering and said, "I'll be back in 10,000 years." You can have another question then.
Well, I see you put your cape on. Were you thinking of doing a song?
Don't turn your back. I learned another songwriting buddy song that's kind of
Okay. Go ahead and just play it.
You sure?
Yeah, positive.
It's kind of fun. Just catch it and you keep it.
One day at the old Coliseum, the games having almost begun, an old lioness in a state of distress was keep giving advice to her son. In a while or so we'll be a parting, and the crowd will be shouting for you, for you. So if you want to stay part of your old mother's heart, there's just one thing you never should do. Don't turn your back on a Christian. There's no telling what he'll stoop to. No, don't turn your back on a Christian, 'cause he's the kind that will double-cross you. Well, some people say it's blaspheming, but it's true, as the history book tells. When nobody persecutes Christians, they tend to persecute everyone else. And yet, even Christians have mothers. So for them, this small offering. If you want to begin to confess all your sins, here's where you mothers can sing. All together now. Don't turn your back on a Christian. There's no telling what he'll stoop to. No, don't, no, turn your back on a Christian, 'cause he's the kind that will double-cross you. He's the kind that will crucify you.
Michael Milner, old buddy out in San Francisco, still living down near L.A.
Well, thanks for watching. We're out of
That's
time.
it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Goodbye, folks.
Thursday, 7:30.
A question of meaning.
Bye.